A Maryland mom called 911 saying her newborn suffocated between couch cushions, but investigators say that was a lie. They claim her own Snapchat videos recorded just hours before tell a much darker story. And a small detail in the background of those clips, a picture frame, may be the key to what really happened. Now prosecutors say she didn't lose her baby in an accident. They accuse her of murdering her 5-week-old daughter. We're digging into the chilling evidence buried in the charging documents and the shocking post this mom made on Facebook after her daughter's death. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Real quick before we start this episode of On the Case, one of the most watched shows on YouTube, I want to talk about our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm with over 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can also click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. A Maryland mother called 911 in tears, saying her newborn had slipped between the couch cushions and smothered. That was her story. You're seeing here a video that the mom posted to Facebook, a tender moment of her playing with her newborn just days before the baby's death. But investigators say her own cell phone captured a very different night. In a series of Snapchat videos she recorded hours before the baby was found dead. In those clips, police say you can hear the 5-week-old crying while her mom, Destiny Shiverall, slurs her words, appearing heavily intoxicated. At one point she says, quote, "I don't know if you hear the expletive baby trippin' in the background." And detectives noticed something pretty chilling. A picture frame seen perfectly straight in the final video, later found hanging crooked when police arrived, suggesting there was some kind of disturbance in the room before the baby died. Now, Destiny Faith Shiverall is charged with first-degree murder, and investigators say the evidence on her own phone may reveal what really happened after the camera stopped rolling. On the day the baby died, December 5th, Shiverall posted an emotional message on Facebook, writing in part, "I don't really know what I'm supposed to say. I unexpectedly lost my beautiful baby girl. Mommy is so sorry, and I can't wait for the day we meet again. This just doesn't feel real. Just please pray for me and my family. My mind is so dark." Then, December 6th, Shiverall posted again, writing, quote, "My baby girl, you were just too perfect for Earth. I'll love and miss you with every ounce of my being. You were so incredibly loved. Mommy can't wait for us to meet again. Just watch over me until then." Now this case takes us back to late October with the birth of this baby girl. And think about that. She just was on this planet for 5 weeks. Now we only know her initials from court records, and it's KC. Again, just 5 weeks old. Her mom, 24-year-old Destiny Faith Shiverall. According to police reports, after Casey was born, Shiverall and the baby were staying with Shiverall's grandmother in Charlestown, Maryland, to have, as the grandmother told investigators, a stable place to live. Fast forward to the evening of Tuesday, December 3rd, police say that Shiverall left her grandmother's house with baby Casey, and she told her grandmother that she was going to a friend's house for a girls' night. That's according to statements that investigators later gathered. The friend's house was a townhome on Lidl Circle in Rising Sun, Maryland. When they left that evening, police note that the grandmother said that the baby appeared to be in good health. What happened next inside that townhome forms the core of the investigation. Based on the police account, Shiverall was on the first floor with Casey, and there were other people in the home, but police indicate that Shiverall and the baby were alone together downstairs for a period of time. Then, in the early morning hours of Wednesday, December 4th, the situation turned tragic. According to the official police narrative, Shiverall reportedly woke up on the couch around 9 o'clock in the morning and found baby Casey unresponsive. She then took the baby upstairs and got help from another person in the home who court records identify only as Witness 1. Witness 1 is the person who actually called 911 and started CPR. When first responders rushed to the home just after 9 in the morning, their observations were immediately grim. Paramedics reported that life-saving measures were attempted, but the baby was pronounced dead at 9:17 in the morning. Police records state that paramedics noted that the baby was already cold and that, quote, slight rigor mortis had set in, a stiffening of the muscles after death, to the point that the baby's legs could not be fully extended. Now, at the scene, Shiverall gave investigators her final explanation. Police say she told them that she had fallen asleep on the couch with Casey beside her late at night, then woke up briefly around 3 o'clock in the morning, and she says the baby was fine then. But then, when she woke up again at 9 o'clock in the morning, that is when the baby girl was unresponsive. Her theory, according to police, was that Casey had, quote, somehow rolled in between a couch cushion and the rear of the couch and smothered. But investigators at the scene also noticed something odd. Police reports mentioned that a picture frame on the wall above the couch was found dangling, sitting at about a 45-degree angle. They made a note of that. Then, the next major turn came from the medical examiner. An autopsy was performed on Friday, December 6th, and the findings, as summarized in the charging documents, they were stark. Doctors ruled the death was a homicide. Now, the cause, blunt force trauma to the head, which caused bleeding at the back of the brain. The medical examiner reportedly told investigators that the injury was caused by a significant amount of force, and that something like a simple fall from a couch would not have caused the injury. The autopsy also reportedly noted other injuries on the baby, including bruises on the scalp and the behind, and a small cut inside the upper lip and an abrasion on the face. That homicide ruling triggered a deeper probe by Maryland State Police. A key part of their investigation, according to police, was seizing Shiverall's cell phone on Monday, December 9th. Detectives say they found a series of videos on the phone, many appearing to be outgoing Snapchat messages, time-stamped from late on December 3rd into the very early hours of December 4th, that critical window before the call was made to 911. She then offered another possible explanation to investigators, the report states. She suggested that maybe her feet accidentally kicked the baby while they slept on the couch, or that she might have hurt the baby while sleepwalking, something that she says happens, quote, especially when she drinks. She also reportedly mentioned that her older toddler could be, quote, rough with the baby, but police notes indicate that she had already told them that the toddler was at their dad's house for the night. Now, during that interview, police say Shiverall made a telling remark, quote, nothing I say is going to fix this, is it? No matter what, I'm going to be blamed for her death, ain't I? The investigation also looked into the drinking that night. Shiverall told investigators that she had not drank very much at all, but evidence recovered inside the home contradicted that narrative. On Wednesday, December 11th, Maryland State Police detectives arrested Destiny Faith Shiverall. She was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and multiple counts of child abuse resulting in death and severe injury. At a bail review hearing the next day, a judge ordered her to be held without bond in the Cecil County Detention Center. Now, that is the basic timeline and the core facts that police are laying out, and from what we can see in court records. But to really understand the weight of the case, you have to look at the specific evidence that investigators are pointing to, and that means going straight into those shocking videos and the disturbing details in the official charging documents. Now, here's a look inside the case file based on the reporting from the newspaper The Cecil Whig and details that are outlined in the charging documents. Now, let's start out with the digital evidence, the videos that police say they recovered from Destiny's phone. According to the lead investigator's statement of probable cause, the series of Snapchat videos span from 11:06 p.m., December 3rd, through 1:34 in the morning the next day, December 4th. And in them, detectives say Shiverall became intoxicated while alone with Casey, and the baby's cries are audible in the background of several clips. One video shows her struggling with the baby gate. The charging document quotes her directly as she gives up, slurring, quote, I'm too bleeping drunk for that. I'm just going to bleeping climb over the bleeping. Now, later, while in a bathroom with the light on, she reportedly says to the camera, quote, I don't know if you hear the bleeping baby tripping in the background. But the videos aren't all frustration. Earlier clips taken shortly before 1 o'clock in the morning show Chevrolet dancing in the kitchen and lip syncing as a popular hip hop song plays. That's according to the police report. The final video sent that night was timestamped around 11:30 in the morning. Chevrolet, battling hiccups, is quoted in the documents as rambling. She's bleeping tripping. But aside that, like she's the chillest baby until she's mad about something, like this is the baddest that she's been in a while, and if I can tell you the tea that I know, you'd be like, but honestly, I love you, but don't trust you enough to tell you, end quote. Investigators noted a critical visual detail that happened at 1:34 in the morning in a video then. A picture frame on the wall above the living room couch, quote, appears to be in proper horizontal position. Yet the charging document stresses this became a key crime scene observation. Quote, this is notable because when first responders arrived the following morning, this picture frame was significantly ajar and closer to a 45-degree orientation to the ground. Now that's a change of about 135 degrees, a silent physical clue that something happened near that couch after the recording stopped. The document lists Casey's other injuries: a 1-inch by 1.5-inch bruise under the scalp near the forehead, 2 bruises on the right buttocks, a small laceration inside the upper lip, a small abrasion on the right side of the face. When confronted with these findings in her second police interview, Chevrolet's reaction is recorded in the affidavit. Quote, I don't understand. I swear I never did anything to her. I would never do that. The documents also highlight a jarring piece of evidence about the drinking that night. While Chevrolet claimed that she only had 1 drink and a Smirnoff shot, a witness in the home told police they found a, quote, nearly empty bottle of vodka on the kitchen table the next morning. Now, the witness said that the bottle had been almost full and stored in the freezer days earlier and was not on the table the night before. In the end, the lead investigator's conclusion in the probable cause statement is blunt. He alleges Chevrolet was, quote, in a state of intoxication while alone with her crying newborn, and that Casey was found, quote, cold, lifeless, and had clearly been deceased for some time. Based on this evidence, the state has charged Destiny Faith Chevrolet with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and multiple counts of child abuse. She remains held without bond as the case moves forward. Joining us now to talk more about this case, partner at Zealous Advocates, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Jeremy Eldridge from Maryland. So a great person to talk to about how this case could play out. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. In this case, this woman is charged with first and second degree murder. How does that work in Maryland? Based off what we know from what police are saying, but just as this heads into the system, what can we expect?
It's a great question. So first degree murder is what you would typically think of as premeditated murder without any justification or mitigation, meaning that you intended to kill somebody, you may have planned to kill that person, and there's no excuse for it, meaning there's no self-defense, or there's not another reason. And I bring up another reason to go that when you hit second degree murder, there's still that intent to kill element, meaning you intended for this person to die, but we have other variations of it. And the variation that the state's probably looking at here is what's called depraved heart murder, meaning that you have, especially in this case, with a young child or an infant, that person sustains physical injury, you fail to render aid or seek medical treatment for that young person as a result of the child abuse, whether it was you or somebody else inflicted it, and then they die as a result of it. And that's probably what the state is looking at here.
Knowing, to this point, it seems like what the medical examiner found is incredibly damning. The timing of it, the state of the body, also just the injuries to this young child, where doctors just say her story just doesn't seem to be adding up. Based on what you've seen, how strong of a case do prosecutors have for first-degree murder?
We're going to have to see what evidence comes out as it pertains to first-degree murder, because in a lot of these cases where infants or young children are victims of child abuse and then die as a result of that abuse, a lot of them end up being circumstantial cases because nobody witnesses the physical act of the abuse. What ends up happening is that you see a pattern of injury on the body, and then the child dies. And then the police start working backwards. Who was in the house at the time? Who had access to the child? Who was watching the child? And what they do is by eliminating those individuals that also may have had access to the child, the father, the parents, other people watching the child, that's how they get to somebody like Destiny. So what we're going to have to see here is obviously they have a strong enough case, but it only has to meet a probable cause standard at this point. Once it gets to trial, there's going to be a process of eliminating anybody and everybody that was around that child as being the aggressor that caused the abuse in order to prosecute her. But first-degree murder in these cases is usually tough. You usually end up with a combination of second-degree depraved heart murder and then what's called child abuse resulting in death, which is far easier to prove because you just have to prove there was abuse and that abuse caused the death.
How does the punishment vary between those and if you were actually able to get first-degree murder?
Well, so first-degree murder in the state of Maryland carries life. And so that is obviously the stiffest penalty within the criminal justice system across the board. Second-degree murder here is 40, but the child abuse resulting in death statute actually requires a subsequent or a consecutive sentence. And so because of that, you could be looking at essentially the same time you would be serving on a first-degree murder if she's found guilty of second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. And if I had to read tea leaves, that's probably where this case is heading, as most do.
The facts that we know at this point in this case is that Destiny, this baby, who we only know her initials are KC, 5 weeks old, they go out for a girls' night at a friend's house. They seem to be doing some heavy drinking. We don't know. She was the only one who was around the baby when, we believe at this point, when the baby ends up dying, and she thought the baby was, between the cushions, but then she raises questions like maybe I kicked the baby. I look at the environment that this baby was in, around alcohol. Anyone who has kids knows a 5-week-old just sleeping on the couch like that is not what any doctor or parent would recommend to do with a 5-week-old. How does the environment factor into the charges that she's facing, that she clearly did some heavy drinking and had a baby in an environment where that baby shouldn't have been?
Well, that's what the prosecutors will use to contextualize the other injuries that show that there was abuse that occurred potentially before that evening. And so if you're looking at bruising on a 5-week-old, that bruising didn't occur that night, right? Because it takes some time for bruising to show up. So if there is this historical abuse, you're going to use that pattern of drinking or that evening of drinking in order to contextualize the other stuff to say, is there this pattern of drinking? Are other people going to say that this is what she's been doing? She's been having a substance abuse problem and failing to really monitor the child's well-being. And that's something, once again, that goes exactly to second-degree depraved heart murder, and then also to things like manslaughter, things that have lower degrees of what I would call a mens rea or a state of mind or specific intent even to get you to murder one. Murder one is so difficult to prove in these cases, especially when you're talking about the facts as we know them now, which is recklessness when it comes to drinking and obviously not watching your child. These are not things that are usually used to show a specific intent to kill, which first-degree murder requires.
Is then another part of it, which when you're reading the police report, it seems like it was this aha moment to investigators and for us talking about it, you're like, oh, that's kind of, fascinating how they zoned in on that there's this picture frame that they see in previous Snapchat pictures. It looks fine. Then the picture frame's at 45 degrees later. It seemed like it had been moved off of the position that it was in. From, if you're a defense attorney, I could see you looking at that and being like, so what? You can't prove how that picture frame moved. Does that factor into this case at all going forward?
It's really difficult to know exactly what theme or what story the prosecutors are going to develop as they move forward. I think when you read a police report, you have a snapshot of the universe of evidence that may exist, what prosecutors may end up arguing in court. But I assure you, as they are in a lot of these cases, they're still going to be interviewing witnesses. They're still going to be putting their case together. So the question in the end becomes, does that picture frame end up mattering once you get into a courtroom? Right now it seems like it does, but as a defense attorney, once you get into court, it may not have any significance at all. If they're unable to show the correlation, then that may be something you use against the state to say, look, you're putting all of this significance or importance on it, but you can't show how it was moved, why it was moved, or how it's related, and it ends up hurting the state. So the state has to be really strategic when they start talking about things in circumstantial cases that may not have the significance that they believe it does just because they're making the assumption that it does.
Prosecutors, I'm sure, will also see a very strong piece of evidence is the medical examiner's report, where you had some very, very sad injuries to this 5-week-old baby, blunt force trauma. How does that factor into the story that prosecutors will tell in the courtroom?
That's the case, Chris. I mean, that's the entire case right there. her attorney's probably going to hire a competing forensic pathologist, someone that we used to call them coroners, now they're forensic pathologists, someone that's going to come in the courtroom. They're going to have the opportunity to look over. In Maryland, we have the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, OCME, that's based out of Baltimore City. Most of the people that need postmortem examination are brought here, and so the medical examiner has an opportunity to produce that report. And if the defense can find a forensic pathologist in another state or somebody that's retired that can look at that report and say, you know what, I'm drawing different conclusions based on the injuries. In most of these physical child abuse cases resulting in death, that's what the trial ends up looking like. It ends up looking like two pathologists that have different or disagreements about what these injuries show, because the state wants to say, this is what these bruises indicate. Or with lividity, the pooling of the blood with a dead body, this is how long the body's been there. This is how long this individual was dead before they contacted the police. And so these are the things that the forensic pathologist, it's probably the most strong part of the case, and they'll use it to disprove Destiny's version of events. Because you have a body with injury to say, well, hold on a second, you're saying X, Y, and Z happened, that's physically impossible.
As a defense attorney, how do you find a pathologist that's going to give you the testimony that you want in the courtroom that fits what your client is alleging happened?
Well, what you want and what you need aren't always possible. And you know, the jokes about defense attorneys finding experts that'll just say anything, it's really difficult to do that these days. A lot of the really good experts have testified for both sides. So what we usually do, and this is any case where we really need a high-level expert, is we're going to have the evidence, we're going to give the evidence over to an expert, we're going to say, this is what we think it could show. Let us know if there's something favorable to the defense. And if they think that there is a debate as to, and a lot of the times the forensic pathology reports, there are difference of opinion. And so they'll say to you, they'll maybe not write your report, they'll call you on the phone, hey, this is what I think. This is why I think this person did an incorrect analysis and the science has changed. And so what they'll do is they'll then put together a report for you, you'll show it to the state, and sometimes you'll use that to negotiate away from murder 1 down to murder 2, or murder 2 down to manslaughter. Or maybe you believe your client is completely innocent, and bringing in a different forensic pathologist will be able to do that. I worked on a case in Maryland going back to, we tried the case 3 times, unfortunately, because of some changes in law and different kids testifying, a highly circumstantial case where this was the issue. There was a battle of forensic pathologists, one from Maryland, one from the former head of a county in Pennsylvania, came down, and they completely disagreed about what the injuries to the child showed. And I was a prosecutor at this point, and that's what the jury was arguing about, which pathologist they believed, because it was such a circumstantial case. No one saw the act of abuse occur.
How difficult is it, especially when you have the state, I mean, the medical examiner looking at this baby's body and saying, the story just doesn't add up. You can't get these injuries from what she's alleging took place. And it seems like her story changed a couple times as well. How difficult is it, even if you have an expert who is qualified and says, I just disagree, to get a jury to go away from what the official medical examiner is saying happened?
So difficult, especially once you have inconsistent statements. Where you have other situations where you have individuals that come forward immediately and cooperate with police. They're sober at the time. There's other adults around that say, you know, when we were talking about SIDS cases, you know, people letting children sleep in bed with them and then roll over onto them or they suffocate. Those cases are a lot more easy to defend because a lot of the time the parents are immediately saying what happened. Their stories are not inconsistent, and it's a matter of their culpability. Did they do something criminal, or was this just a horrible accident that they're going to have to carry with them for the rest of their life, right? Because there's a significant collateral consequence to the individuals that do these. They carry this thing with them, even when it's a horrible accident. But here, the number of inconsistent statements, as it seems, is going to make it very difficult for the defense to bring in somebody like a forensic pathologist and just say, we have a difference of opinion here, and this is how those injuries could have occurred. When you have somebody that was also, and this is what you haven't brought up yet, the fact that she's so under the influence, if she chooses to testify, is going to be the first thing they bring against her. It's not even, hey, you're inconsistent and you're lying. It's, you're inconsistent because you're under the influence. Your memory is impaired. We know that alcohol and controlled dangerous substances affect people's memories. So even if she didn't intend to lie, it affects her credibility because we all have issues believing people that were on drugs or alcohol or pain medication at the time they're giving those statements, and that can often be inconsistent in and of itself.
Because not only do you have those inconsistent statements, including just a line of saying, like, I'm going to be blamed for this, aren't I? Like, just kind of saying something like that to police officers, it's just not a good look. And then you're suggesting, oh, she was beneath the cushions, we were sleeping, oh, I might have kicked her. And then it's like it just seems like she has no idea what happened, or she does and she's lying. We'll see, what happens as this continues forward. You also have these Snapchat videos from that night at the house. She's clearly drunk. The baby is clearly crying as well. And it just seems, if you were a prosecutor on this case, how do you have this? How do you use it and present it to a jury in the way where it's almost you're able through the audio of it to create this environment where you could see someone, if you're arguing that she killed this child on purpose, that you see someone who was in a state where they could have lost it and then actually inflicted, what the medical examiner says that she did to the child.
That's a great point, right? Because as inflammatory and potentially helpful as it may be to the state to get the jury to see how irresponsible and reckless that Destiny was as her child is dying or prior to being killed, the question then becomes, if you can show that this person was so intoxicated, do you walk into what's called the voluntary intoxication defense, which nullifies the specific intent for first-degree murder and potentially downgrades the charges. Because in Maryland, if you're so intoxicated and you didn't form a plan to commit a crime before you got intoxicated, and it only happened once you were intoxicated, could the defense then use that to say she couldn't have formed the specific intent to commit murder because she was so heavily under the influence? That's why I mentioned in the beginning that a lot of these cases start angling towards second-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, manslaughter. Because you start negotiating, going, okay, well, we know we have some issues with murder one, but we're going to start you off there and make you negotiate downwards, which is how 99% of these cases play out.
And also, too, she was, again, in an environment and took this child into an environment for something that just seems irresponsible. I think to most people in the public, you're bringing a 5-week-old to a girls' night and you're doing some heavy drinking with vodka. Like, it's just, that's what police are saying happened. It's not a good look. How does that potentially, as you're kind of painting her background and who she is, how that could factor into just the way the jury perceives her and the impact that could just have on whatever defense she tries to bring forward?
Well, Chris, frankly, things like this, horrific tragedies like this, don't happen in stable environments, right? What the defense is going to argue is they're going to push, if you have to have a trial, as much of as the recklessness as humanly possible. It actually works out in their favor if they're forced into trial, if you can't negotiate a resolution, to paint her as being impaired and to paint her as being reckless, because it walks the jury away from that specific intent that's required for murder. And if you can walk them away from that intent, even if her being irresponsibly factually sounds horrible to all of us, it gets you away from the most severe penalty here. And in most cases where we see mothers prosecuted for this, you're also going to see things like postpartum. You're going to see suffering from depression. You're going to see, these are things that have become incredibly common in these cases. Why was she heavily drinking right after this? Did she already suffer from a substance abuse issue? Is she going to see, for instance, a forensic psychiatrist beforehand, quietly, that the defense organizes in order to start piecing together some of this mitigation to say, this is a woman who experienced a lot of trauma. This is why this happened. Yes, she made a horrible decision. Yes, she's responsible for her child's death, but let me explain to you why, to try to walk down that penalty to something that the defense sees as being more reasonable.
And we'll see what happens next in this. Obviously, just incredibly awful for a 5-week-old baby to lose their life, and in the environment that police say that she did. Jeremy Eldridge, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, partner with Zealous Advocates. Thank you, as always, for being with us on Law and Crime. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.